A little bit of fog out there, but it's time now to check in with a good friend of ours, Kim Bear from the Bear Law Office, to find out what in the world is going on in this world of ours right now. And time to say good morning to Kim. And Kim, we're talking about things that are happening when it comes to government, everybody paying attention to every level of government, whether it's happening in your city, if it's happening in the state, or it's happening nationally right now. And that's your topic of discussion here this morning, isn't it?
Yes, it sure is, Lou. I thought it might be helpful just to explain to people when you've got differing recommendations, executive orders, and then things coming from the federal government, how that all plays together. And so what I thought we'd first talk about is mayors and local officials versus the governor.
Okay. Perfect, because we heard some things come down from Mayor Frank just last week or so, what he wanted to do, and then there's what the governor wants to do. Then, of course, there's what the president and his staff want to do. So, so let's start with what the mayor said.
Yes, yes. So as we know, the mayor has been recommending a shelter in place, the mayor of Des Moines. The governor of Iowa, Kim Reynolds, has not issued a shelter in place. And so the way that that works is that the mayor is making recommendations. That is not a law. That is not an ordinance. It is a recommendation that obviously, as the mayor, he would like you to follow for health and safety. Then the governor has so far has not felt that a shelter in place is necessary. And when she issues an executive order, that is a law. That is, it's enforceable by the police. So basically, when you have a conflict between the governor and the governor is the person who's going to win in this situation. That doesn't mean that shelter in place isn't a good idea, and certainly we should all be trying to stay at home as much as possible. But as of right now, with regard to legally, the governor is, she's the governor of our state, so she's the person that calls the shots.
Okay, it's the higher of the two offices. Basically, if you look at rankings and the way the offices are stacked up, that's pretty much what takes precedent, isn't it?
Yes, that's exactly how it works. So then we have President Trump, and obviously he's making lots of recommendations and trying to help the states. And I wanted to address this today because I've heard some clients and then some friends say, well, if this was really serious, President Trump would issue a shelter in place. And I want to clarify, with our viewers with regard to what President Trump can and really probably cannot do on his own. And I don't believe that President Trump has the power to issue a shelter in place unless Congress gives that to him. So.
Okay, I didn't realize that because I think that's what the reason everybody watches intensely every day when he comes out with his updates to see whether or not he is going to say that we are going to shelter in place. But you said this has to go through Congress before he's able to pull the trigger on something like that.
Yes, so we have a conflict between the federal government and the state government with regard to constitutions. And just a quick overview, the federal government has, in our Constitution, we have what's called the Supremacy Clause. And the Supremacy Clause says that the federal government is supreme over the states. And so the federal government does have the authority to come in and issue federal laws, and that trumps state laws. But with regard to the federal government being able to require states to enforce federal law, then it gets complicated. And without mucking it up too much, that comes under the Commerce Clause. And everything I've read and studied says that Congress, under the Commerce Clause, would have to give President Trump the authority. So they'd have to go back to Congress, they'd have to go back to D.C., and they'd have to issue something giving him the authority to issue a shelter in place.
And that seemed to have been the term of the last couple of weeks has been the shelter in place. But over the last couple of days, some of the conversation has turned to, well, why don't they just issue a curfew and just make people, get off the streets at a certain time? And that would do the same thing. What's his power when it comes to a curfew? Say if he says 8 o'clock, everybody has to be home. What type of thing would happen in that case?
He still needs authority from Congress to do that because his authority comes from the Commerce Clause, and that is to regulate commerce among the states. And there are some people that don't believe that health and safety fall under the Commerce Clause, but then there are people that do. And so, certainly I suppose if he issued a shelter in place without Congress, I'm sure it would be attacked legally. And so, his authority with regard to governing the states and telling them what to do is pretty limited. That's the reason why he's on air every day making recommendations. And his job really is to try and help the states, which is what he's doing. I mean, he's trying to, use the National Guard and use the national stockpile to get materials to the states. But the states are really calling the shots right now, one by one.
All right, so the bottom line here, Kim, in our conversation is Kim Reynolds in her office. Those are the people making the rules for us right here in Iowa, right?
That's true. That's true.
Okay.
She's the person that's in charge of Iowa. Yes. And then one point I wanted to mention, talking about Governor Reynolds and making the shots, calling the shots. The Iowa Supreme Court is also then calling the shots with regard to the court system. And one topic that's been coming up that I just wanted to touch on. A lot of people who are divorced or who have custody orders in place or visitation and orders have been arguing about where the children should go because school's out and people are scared about COVID-19. And so I wanted to just clarify for our viewers that there is a Supreme Court order that's come out that says parents are to follow their custody decree or their visitation schedule. They're to treat it like a normal week. It's not early summer break. It's not a continuation of spring break. So if your normal schedule is you get your kids every Wednesday and every other weekend, then that's what you're doing.
All right, so it's on your regular routine. There's no special provisions that are in place since the kids are at home all the time like they would be on vacation. You follow the normal as if they were in school routine. That's what you're saying.
Yes, that's what the Supreme Court has issued an order, and that was very helpful to us because we were getting a lot of calls and people were arguing. They want to keep the kids. They say it's early summer break. We're going to follow the summer schedule, or it's an extension of spring break. Spring break was mine. So no, just so everyone's clear, just follow whatever your court order says for a normal schedule.
Okay, and your office is still doing business, but you're doing it virtually. Is that correct?
Yes, we're doing it virtually. We can do conference calls. We can set up, to meet people, to have Zoom calls if they'd like. But yeah, we're working remotely and we still have a receptionist in the office. So.
All right. You can see up in the upper left-hand corner there, if the City View Best of Awards were championship rings, Kim would have 5 of them, one for each finger and for her thumb.
Yes.
5 times in a row she won that award. There's a reason for that because she is that good and just makes a whole lot of sense. It makes it easy to understand, too. Kim Baer, people want to get a hold of you. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, just give us a call, 279-2000. We're more than happy to answer your questions.
All right, Kim, you stay healthy, pal, and we'll see you real soon.
Okay, thanks, Lou.
Okay, bye-bye. There you go.
Bye.
Kim Baer, what a great person. It is